Welcome to the construction show. We are here in St. Louis, and we are filming at the World of Asphalt show. And I've had a couple different names. So World of Asphalt, Richard, and
Ag1.
And Ag1. Okay, so and of course, that leaves me. I have to introduce Richard Crowe. You are the president and GM of InnoDredge.
Yes, sir.
And I am really excited to have you on the show and to get into everything dredges. So, it's great to be filming here. Maybe just to start off, when did InnoDredge start? Maybe a little bit of history of the company as it's your first time on the construction show, and jump in from there.
Yeah, so I'm an operations guy by education and most of my experience. And I actually bought the first version of the dredges we build in 2012 when I was with a producer.
Okay.
And that's how I got introduced to this line. And then through a series of meetings and introductions and mergers and acquisitions, so I ended up with InnoDredge in February of last year.
Oh, so very recent.
Very recent.
Okay.
Now, the company existed as Roy Draco Americas since 2020.
Okay.
And then we went through an ownership change and a name change in February of last year.
I see. So how's it been? So is this the first? Is this your first company that you have started then?
The first one of this size. I was
Okay.
I was a minority partner in the previous company, and then I've had a couple
Okay.
other small businesses. I was a consultant for a few years, coming right out of the aggregates business for Heidelberg.
Got it. And so InnoDredge then. So we'll get a little bit more into the history. I guess getting into it, what are these dredges being used for in the specific sectors in construction, and like what's the background of the product? 'Cause it sounds like it's been around for quite some time then.
Yeah, most of the machines are in aggregate sites, sand and gravel,
Okay.
primarily. We're starting to see some interest in drilled and blast limestone, which is somewhat unusual.
Okay.
And then in gold on occasion.
Okay.
We've got a few gold miners that.
I know that the dredges that I've seen, they come from mining equipment businesses, like, yeah,
Right.
dredging for gold.
Right. Yeah, we try not to go into that environment for the TV shows because the only thing
Yeah.
that makes money is when they break, and I don't want my machines
Yeah.
to break.
Yeah.
But that's where most of the applications is in the aggregate space and sand and gravel businesses. And we build all the dredges from suction dredges to mechanical clamshell dredges and bucket ladder dredges, using what I learned in the last 25 years of working on dredges and operating dredges and being around them, putting them together, troubleshooting, commissioning.
Okay, I think you said 25 years. So you've actually been, so basically like a huge chunk of your career, or maybe most of it, has been with the dredging machines.
In one way, form or another, yes.
Okay.
Either as an operator and a customer of companies like InnoDredge,
Yeah.
that would be a buyer and operate the machines, all the way through consulting on projects,
Okay.
to here finally being a part of an actual OEM.
Right. And are you on the manufacturing side then? Are you building these here in the USA?
We have the ability to, yes.
Okay.
One of the benefits of us is we also have access to European manufacturing and European parts and European technology.
Okay.
But we can do all of that here in the States as well.
I see.
So we have fabricators that we use all across the state of Texas, so that no matter what the tariff wars do to us,
Yeah.
we have the ability to still be a good business and a good business partner for our customers.
Where in Europe where's it coming from for the dredging? The background of that, like, is it sounds like you've had a connection with them for quite a long time, like in Europe on the dredging side?
So I learned in 2012, really, that the Netherlands is sort of the home for long-term dredging.
Oh, really?
Their entire country's underwater, and so they learned to pump thousands of years ago.
Oh, I feel like I was reading about that. Okay, yeah, the berms, right?
Windmills and things were originally there to pump water out so that they could farm the land.
Okay.
And so they've been pumping for a really long time, and they've got some pretty innovative and creative technologies, and there's a ton of dredge manufacturers over there and a ton of dredge component manufacturers over there.
Okay.
So it was good for us to be able to tie into that history.
Right.
Particularly since we're a relatively young company in and of ourselves, to be able to have the backing of 1,000 years worth of dredging and pumping history is pretty powerful.
Definitely.
Pretty powerful.
Let's talk about our heavy industry tour brought to you by Orica Digital Solutions. Blast IQ Underground provides quality control and improved underground drill and blast productivity for superior blast outcomes. Effectively manage the underground blasting process from planning to post-blast analysis with user-friendly reporting, analytics, and information management. We are heading to events across North America and Australia and filming episodes on location. Email us at info@crownsman.com to be part of Crownsman's Heavy Industry Tour. For over 50 years, Pedrolo has established itself as a global leader in water, energy, and technology solutions for various market sectors, including residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, and even swimming pools. Pedrolo offers a wide range of pumps, including surface pumps, pressure boosting pumps, submersible pumps, and more, catering to both clean and dirty water applications. The company's automated designs feature world-class engineering, innovative mechanics, and advanced automation, all aimed at enhancing performance, all the while empowering trade professionals to optimize their efficiency and reduce costs. Pedrolo is at the forefront of pioneering water solutions for a dynamic world. Visit pedrolousa.com to learn more. As heavy machinery specialists for construction, SMS Equipment knows performance, like the performance they achieve together in a partnership dedicated to the success of their construction customers. At SMS Equipment, they're more than machines from trusted brands. They're the people beside you today and every day, bringing industry-leading technology and expertise to your job site. Because the right partnership makes everything possible. SMS Equipment, partners in your possibilities. Discover what's possible at smsequipment.com.
So, and you have, so it sounds like you have like people that you can actually like, or you have learned from their expertise over there for like quite some time.
Absolutely. So when I was working with Roy Draco, the Rohrport was a German company.
Okay.
Been building those dredges since the 30s or 40s, something like that in Europe. The first one was delivered in 1980 here in the States.
Okay.
And then the Idraco side of that business is the suction dredge side. They've been building dredges as Idraco since the early 2000s. And I actually bought the first Idraco dredge in the U.S. as a customer in 2012.
Got it.
And so I got to know these guys all through that sort of process. And one of the things I learned very quickly is how advanced they were in using the experiences that they have. There's universities in the Netherlands that are centered around dredging and maritime industry.
Really?
It's a small country of, I think, roughly 14 million people.
Yeah.
I think they all know each other. And most of them work in the maritime industry. And
Right.
so for me to have access to that, I've got a couple of business partners that are over in the Netherlands. That one is a dredge engineer that comes out of one of those universities, and the other one is he's a former Marine that's an excellent project manager, and so we use those resources to help us access the supply chain in Europe.
I see.
And then we've got a sales and support staff over here in the States, and then good partners to work with for manufacturing.
That's actually leads into a good point. Like maybe on like the suction dredges and the mechanical dredges, are those the two lines that are really specific to the construction market in the USA?
Yes, the predominant dredge is a suction dredge. That's the one.
Okay.
And when you say dredge, that's the one that most people are familiar with. It's a suction dredge, and there's variations on them. The mechanical dredges are the bucket ladder dredges and the clamshell dredges. Those have a bit more of a unique application.
Okay.
We're the only one in the States right now that can provide all of those dredges.
Maybe if you can break, so like the suction dredge, maybe just for people watching and for myself, for watching the first time, what are some ways that people use these? What are they used for, and how are they specialized in those different lines that you said? I think you mentioned clamshell, and the other one was
Bucket ladders?
bucket ladders. Yeah. So maybe like if you can give like a breakdown of those three.
Yeah, so there's a couple of key metrics that you're looking for when I go onto a site. And the beauty of us is I can go onto the site with sort of a blank slate because I don't have a preference of what machine I can supply.
Oh, I see.
And so you ask questions about, okay, how much gravel is in the deposit? How deep are you trying to dig? How far are you trying to carry the material? How big is the gravel in it? If you have a site that has a lot of rock, then bucket ladders and clamshell machines start to make sense. If you have a site that has Volkswagens at the bottom of the lake, it's almost got to be a clamshell dredge because they've got buckets.
Oh, so you're actually literally pulling those out.
Yeah, clamshell dredge is much what it talks about. It's just a big grapple that goes down and picks up your material. So you can handle some rather large pieces of aggregate.
Right.
If you've got a particularly sandy deposit, not a lot of gravel, and most of your gravel is smaller than 12 inches, then you start talking about the suction dredges, which is just pumps. You're just sucking it up like a vacuum cleaner.
And then once it's coming up, then does it, when it gets brought up to the surface, is there a screening process then, or does it get over to land? Is that where the screening happens?
It depends on the machine. The mechanical machines, because you're basically bringing the material up somewhat dry in buckets, you process it a little bit on the machine, and then you generally convey it to shore.
I see.
On the suction dredges, you're picking up water, sand, rock, the whole 9 yards, and you pump it to a processing facility of some sort on shore.
So who would you say your main clients are? Where are the surface areas in the States for this? And do you go abroad as well? Are you going into Canada? Is that a market?
We go into Canada a little bit. We've
Okay.
got one customer in Latin America.
Oh, nice.
We've got a couple of leads in Latin America that hopefully will become customers soon.
Okay.
And then we're all over the U.S.
Okay.
The geology in the U.S. is pretty interesting. There's a band that runs sort of northern Tennessee, northern Missouri. From that line north,
Yeah.
you see a lot of mechanical machines because it's old glacial deposits, so you get a lot of big rock.
Okay.
And geology tends to determine which machine you're after. And then south of those lines, you see more of the suction machines. But we've got customers in Florida, Texas, Ohio, Washington, California. I mean, we cover from coast to coast, New Jersey.
Pumping systems. They're the heartbeat of manufacturing, but they can be real headaches, can't they? Vibration, pulsation, back pressure. It's a wonder anything gets done efficiently or safely. That's where Blaco comes in. Their pulsation dampeners, back pressure valves, and other solutions are designed to tame the chaos, improve efficiency, and add reliability and safety to your pumping system. Imagine less downtime, lower maintenance costs, and a whole lot less stress. That's the Blaco difference. Blaco Industries, smooth flow, smooth operation, made in the USA. Visit blaco.com to learn more. Join us in the depths of the mining world, where global leaders and industry giants converge to shape the future of mining. From groundbreaking technologies, advanced machinery, revolutionary safety measures, to sustainable initiatives. This is the voice of mining. This is Mining Now. Showcase your company to millions worldwide. Book your episode now. Visit crownsman.com.
One question I have about these sites. So it sounds like a lot of times if this is it sounds like are some of these deposits coming from like if they're digging like an existing spot, or are they actually doing this like in like the riverbeds and that?
Some of them are in the rivers. There's a law unique to the U.S. called the Jones Act.
Okay.
That if you're in waters of the U.S., public river or something of the sort,
Yeah.
the steelworks, the hull essentially has to be manufactured in the U.S.,
Okay.
which is part of the reason that we have U.S. manufacturing access.
Right.
I don't have any machines in that environment yet.
Yeah.
Someday I hope to.
Oh, okay.
We're in conversations with a few companies about doing some things like that. Most of what we do is inland.
Okay.
And there are some unique applications. We've got a customer up in Minnesota that actually has a rather large clamshell machine,
Yeah.
and they also have a suction machine on the same site.
Oh, they're using both.
Both the same site.
Okay.
What they did is they went in and they mined, and they were hungry for gravel.
Yeah.
And they put the sand back. Well, when they put the sand back, they covered up good reserves, and so they needed to move the sand.
Oh, okay.
It's difficult to move the sand with a mechanical dredge, so then
Right.
they cut a suction dredge in to remove the sand.
They go back in with
To move the sand again, touch it one more time. Just
So
for
they've
fun.
got that's basically it started as a mine, so they just kept going lower and lower and then got into the water basically, but there's more reserves.
Quite a lot of dredging customers, they start off with either yellow iron digging a hole, and then
Okay.
they eventually get so deep they can't keep up with the water, and then you have to convert
okay.
to something else. And
Yeah.
and if you think about the math, it makes a lot of sense to go from an excavator operator, 3 or 4 truck drivers, a dozer man, down to one dredge operator. The math is pretty convincing that it's the right thing.
Can you sometimes switch and get basically switch all that machinery for a dredge?
As long as there's a bit of water, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can go from yellow iron and go right straight to a dredge. And
That's pretty fascinating. So that's they were going after gravel and sand. They ended up in Minnesota.
Yep.
What are other is this obviously we know for gold for dredging, but what are other sectors, industrial sectors that are using your dredges?
do some industrial minerals.
Okay.
Frac sands and silica sands and things of that nature, which it's just a fancy form of sand and gravel.
Yeah.
A little higher production rates generally than what
Okay.
you get out of a typical sand and gravel operation.
Yeah,
but
what
it's pretty
actually
interesting.
maybe talk about that a little bit. What sort of production rates are you like your dredges? I imagine you can customize them for each customer so they can get different rates.
Yeah, there's an insanely wide range. The
Okay.
mechanical machines are somewhat limited because it's difficult to get very big on a bucket. It gets super expensive.
Right.
Money can buy you the capacity you want, but the math sometimes doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So there's clamshell dredges that are out there that'll do 1,500 tons an hour.
Oh,
That's kind of the
really?
ceiling.
Okay.
But there's suction dredges out there that'll do 2,000 or 3,000 tons an hour.
2 or 3. Okay, so what are they putting on these for engines?
Oh, you'll see 1,000, 1,200 horsepower, not uncommon on a pump.
Nice. Are they using? Is it actually? I think I heard you talking with another gentleman. Is it electric or diesel that they're using?
Historically, it's been diesel, but in the last decade or so, there's been a pretty strong move to electric. Most of what we do is based on electric.
Okay.
We can do diesel, but we keep our electric infrastructure as much as we can. I'm being an operations guy historically.
Yeah.
Diesel to me seems like a lot of work. There's 500-hour oil changes on your engines, on your hydraulic systems. There's always
Yeah.
mechanical issues. They're loud.
Yeah.
You always have risks of spills. Well, if you convert all of that to electric, which we can do nowadays, you convert all of that to electric, there's no more oil changes. There's no more having to carry diesel out to a dredge on the lake. There's no more having to deal with hydraulics on the water, worry about oil spills and that sort of thing. It's clean,
Yeah,
it's quiet,
Yeah, that's the one thing.
it's
It's like-
efficient.
yeah, for sure. The and the like obviously the environmental impact not having to deal with the oil is massive.
It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Is there any other like interesting, I guess almost like case studies that you've had with InnoDredge, like with like how they're using the products now? Anything stand out?
So we've got a customer that pumps, I think it's somewhere in the magnitude of 4 or 5 miles through
Oh,
a
really?
series of pumps.
Okay.
Something like 1,000 tons an hour. It's a pretty interesting process to get pumps all synced up and synchronized where you've got a good balance on the system and the dredge isn't overrunning the system or vice versa.
So are they? So if I'm not wrong, so you're dredging out of the water, and then you've got these going from. You're basically running that through the hose to each pump.
In
And-
series, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, about 2,200 feet or so.
And is that again? That's sand and gravel as well. that
It's
they're
an
doing it
industrial
for?
sands application. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
fantastic.
heavy sands.
It sounds like you love going on site because almost everything, if there's water involved, it seems like a dredge can potentially be the move.
Right. Yeah. So most of our dredges, all but one style, they all need water to float in.
Yeah.
We do have one machine that's a track-mounted machine.
Oh, okay.
That is sort of interesting, but it needs enough water for at least the boom to be underwater to lubricate everything.
Okay,
But that's a pretty uncommon machine.
right. With those clients, you go on site. You basically will do a full assessment of what they have. Then,
When we go on site, we have a series of questions that's on our brochures
Okay.
about, what is the percent gravel? How big is the gravel? How much sand? How deep?
Yeah.
Is there any clay? A lot of geologic questions, and then
Yeah.
there's processing questions that come after that. How do you want the material to be delivered to you?
right.
Are you good with a lot of water, or do you need it conveyed and dried? And
When you say a lot of water, so some people they don't mind if it's wet, like
well,
the material.
if you're pumping, for example,
Yeah.
70% of your pipeline is at minimum is going to be water.
right.
And so that's a lot of water if you're trying to do 1,000 tons an hour. And so they have to have a processing plant that will accept that. And,
Okay.
and one of the things I find really enjoyable is because I am an operations guy at heart still,
Yeah.
I get into those conversations a bit more than I might should because I enjoy them. So when I go to a site and I go in cold, we start at the beginning of the process and we look at what they're excavating and what their material looks like and what their geology looks like and what their
Yeah.
terrain looks like, because all that impacts pumping or conveying. And then we'll go visit the processing plant so that I can get a really good understanding of what they're doing with it after I deliver it to them.
Right.
Because sometimes I can change how it gets delivered.
Oh, okay.
Whether it's with a different pump size or a different horsepower combination or a different pipeline size on the suction machines or buckets or conveyors or processing equipment on the mechanical machines. All of that, I can adjust my dredges and the options for them to suit what they already have existing at a plant, where they're not having to fight it when the machine shows up.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It sounds like you have pretty extensive, like I said, on the operations side. Do you have a background in like even education in like construction, or is it go into like mining and that?
I'm a mining engineer by education. I
Oh,
graduated from
okay.
a school about 2 hours from here, Missouri
makes a
Science
lot
and
of sense.
Technology. Yeah, it
Okay.
was University of Missouri-Rolla when I was there.
So that also with the experience from, I'm sure, in the Netherlands, you've been able to basically bring that and help people out on these different sites?
Absolutely. So when you combine, say, my Dutch engineer
Yeah.
who graduated from the dredging school, when you combine his knowledge of pumps and pump curves and that sort of thing with my ability to take that information and understand how it's going to affect the processing plan of our customers,
Yeah.
we're a pretty dangerous duo.
Yeah.
And then I've got another salesman that is Gustavo Gutierrez, who takes care of our Latin America market primarily and then flies all over the U.S. He's an operations guy as well. He comes out of the concrete business and the construction business and then
Okay.
the sand and gravel business in Houston.
Right.
And so between the two of us, we've got a pretty good understanding of how these sites work. And when the customers talk to us, we can talk to them in the same language that they do.
That's a
about
huge.
screens and crushers.
That's
and
probably a huge thing because that
I'd like to think so.
that probably affects, like when you're saying like screens and crushers. manufacturers as well. How they're getting out that material obviously affects that as well.
Right. What they want in end products, whether they want all the sand or not, whether they want all the gravel or not, and what size they want it. All of that impacts what we can offer them in a dredge.
Is there some instances now that you see, like when you're doing that assessment, do people not realize that it's an option yet? Or do most people know that InnoDredge could actually help them out? Like when do they typically come to you in the process?
They've usually decided that dredging of some shape or form is the next alternative. They've either run out of room and need to get deeper, which is getting quite common as permits get harder to do.
Right.
Or they're running yellow iron and they're just exhausted with the people and the equipment and the long haul distances.
And they just have to keep yellow iron. Do they just have to keep adding more and more people?
Yes, as you get further away, you've just got to keep throwing another dump truck into the system to keep things moving. And and when you're doing it in that manner in an alluvial deposit, there's always water coming in. So you've got all of that equipment, and then you have pumps trying to pump the water out, and big rainstorm, and now you can't produce for 2 days, and so then dredging becomes an option, and that's usually when we get phone calls. Hey, we need to do something different.
Okay, that's what you want. It's more of those phone calls, basically.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what we enjoy, solving problems.
Yeah, and it kind of leads into when you mentioned the problems. And you did touch on those case studies, but is there any other like interesting problems that like you've seen in the past? Well, I mean, even since you started InnoDredge, but is there kind of like common ones that people come to you as well with for those like problem solving tips, I guess you would say?
Pumping efficiencies is a big one. Trying to figure out how to maximize what's in your pipeline. The one that we talked about where there's 2 dredges on the same site.
Yeah.
We did an update on an old suction machine that we moved in there, and it's got a monitor.
Okay.
It's got a monitor on it that actually sprays down a high bank because there's like 60 foot of sand above the water level. And so when you're excavating like that, it's just like being in a trench. You have to be mildly concerned that stuff is going to slough off, and it won't bury the dredge because you don't get that close to it, but it may cause problems underwater. And so we put a turret on it to help wash the bank down and control that.
I think you actually have the photo of that where they've got the sandbank.
Yeah,
It's pretty
one of the photos I share with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool, and we'll obviously have these. We'll have these in the episode so people can see what we're referencing. These are some great things that we're covering. One thing I wanted to touch back on as well. So you talk about. So obviously we've got the suction dredges, we've got the mechanical, the intelligent design. What all is involved with that, and how is that being used when you're manufacturing these for the customers?
So because our models are based in Europe, there's a tremendous concern about energy consumption. So efficiency is extremely important to what we build. And so we do things like direct coupled underwater permanent magnet motors.
Okay.
And when you do that, you save 15 to 20% in horsepower required to turn the same size pump. And that can be a huge number.
Direct coupled
permanent magnet motors.
Permanent magnet motors. Those are being used when that hose is going down, like they're actually underwater.
It is underwater, yes. That could be 40, 50 feet underwater.
Okay. Well, anyway, I kind of interrupt you there, but that's okay. So that's one big.
Yeah. So energy efficiency is a key part of the design. In the U.S., it doesn't matter quite as much because power costs are still relatively low.
Right.
But it does allow me to go, in a lot of cases, with a slightly smaller motor than my competitors. Electric motor than my competitors.
Okay.
And the other thing we do is we lean a lot on automation systems, control systems, remote support systems, sonar and GPS systems. So we have an InnoDredge operating system that includes in the HMI an error system where you can drill down on the error code that comes up, and it will actually pop up with a red dot on the component in the MCC cabinet or in the PLC cabinet where there's a failure.
Oh, okay.
And so you don't have to have an electrician to go solve the problems. And then all of our machines are connected, and we've moved from cellular connections to Starlink. And so they're all connected. So the operator can ring me or one of my technicians, and they can help walk through the troubleshooting process. Because one of the things we've learned is most of these sites are really good mechanically. Really good mechanically.
Yeah.
They can fix diesel engines and hydraulic systems and hydraulic pumps.
Right.
But electricity is different. It's sort of silent. It's hidden. People tend to be a little more afraid of it, and by MSHA rules, you have to have electricians work on them. It's not a good idea to have just a mechanic working on your electrical system.
Yeah.
And so we build remote access into all of our machinery, and so that allows us to help the operator troubleshoot. In a lot of cases, we can reset things without ever having to set foot on the dredge. We can drill in and see where errors are and send a part without ever having to stand foot on a dredge.
So now these dredges are going out with the Starlink, so they're always connected. Basically, you don't have the cellular issue anymore, which has been that's going to be a huge impact on so much.
Inevitably, mine sites are at the end of a cellular band and in a bad spot for an electrical connection, right?
Of course.
So being able to go to Starlink has been a game changer. The connection speeds are much more reliable and much better.
So the InnoView,
The InnoView is our sonar system.
Okay, that's separate.
Yep, that's a separate machine. So the InnoView system actually allows the operator to see what's going on underwater.
Okay.
Right. So for most of dredging history, you were kind of guessing, and your best operators were really the ones who had the most sensitive seat because they could feel what was going on. Now they can see it. And so you're sitting in a cab that looks more like the USS Enterprise from Star Trek than an actual dredge used to look. So you've got joystick controls and a couple of big monitors that show you your HMI and your OptiView and InnoView sonar system.
So it's just like all this new equipment. You've got that whole cab is just completely technology advanced.
Yeah, the days of having, when I was first introduced to dredging, you had heavy hydraulics, 1.5-inch hydraulic lines running into the cab and all the heat and oil that came with it. And then they moved to pilot valves, which was super nice because now you're 1/2-inch pipes instead of 1.5-inch pipes. So that cooled the cab down a little bit. Now it's all electric. And so even on the diesel over hydraulic dredges we build, we won't bring any hydraulics into the cab. It's all electric. So you've got joysticks and push buttons and sensors, and then you've got your HMI screens that you can work off of with drill down menus, and then we can log into and see to help assist. We've got programs and subscription programs that will allow us to provide you with a report, weekly, monthly, annually, whatever, of downtime reports or issue reports or production reports, and it's extremely powerful, the amount of data that's available.
Are you also providing like the service for when they need like replacement parts and I'm sure there is some like wear and tear, of course, like on any of this. So are you doing that as well after they get one of your machines?
Absolutely. So we've got a pretty good supply chain built to help support all the equipment we have. And in truth, I want to build dredges that the customers don't need me to take care of. They can go buy parts from wherever. But I want them to call me because they know we're going to take care of them.
Right.
So that's the ultimate goal. We have a few pieces that are a bit unique, like the underwater permanent magnet motors. It's not something you can go buy off a shelf.
Nope, doesn't seem like it.
but those, 35,000, 40,000 hours is the first time you're really going to have any issue out of something like that in most cases. So that's a once every decade kind of cycle.
Yeah.
But the general parts and the common wear parts, we want to make sure that our customers can keep their machine running without being solely reliant on us. There's a nice model of, if you can sole supply your customers, a captive customer, but that's a dangerous place to be.
It sounds like you and your wife had to do a trip to the Netherlands, and I wanted to touch on that because apparently there's a little bit of a backstory with that process, with what happened.
Yes, it's pretty interesting. The traveling over there, I had never been to Europe before. Before doing all of this, so first and foremost, it's different. It doesn't operate the same way that the U.S. does. It's a totally different culture.
Yeah.
Good and bad. There's some nice thing to it. I think if I lived in Europe, I'd probably be a much more relaxed individual.
Right.
I'm not naturally wired that way, so I don't know how healthy that would be. But the first trip over there, I didn't think anything of it, and I go over there and I'm meeting partners and going through the normal work day, and we decide to meet up to go for a hike.
Mm-hmm.
And so I text my wife, "Hey, can you meet us here?" Sure. She promptly gets in the car and realizes we didn't turn on the international calling plan on her phone and was completely lost.
Oh dear.
Completely lost. So that night, she found us about 4 hours later. She ended up she ended up going to the restaurant that we ended up at after the deal. But you can imagine 4 hours of not being able to talk to your wife, wondering where in the world she was quite the experience.
Oh boy.
But it was a lot of fun. But through that process, that's when I really started to fully understand how powerful the maritime industry in the Netherlands were.
Yeah.
Because everybody I talked to came from a dredging school or a maritime architect or some sort of pump engineer. It was all a very specific class of education that runs around over there, and it was very, very powerful. And I realized that was probably one of our superpowers, is to be able to bring that over here.
One of your partners is still in the Netherlands as well, correct?
Yes. Okay. I've got a partner, Martin Post, who is in the Netherlands now. He runs our office out of Rotterdam.
Okay.
And then we've got a dredge engineer over there as well.
What year did you first go over there?
It was 2022.
Oh,
I think that's
okay.
the first year I went over there.
Okay.
So we started the partnership in the business in 2020 as a glutton for punishment. I decided here we are in the middle of a pandemic with nobody traveling anywhere,
Yeah.
and I'm going to start a business. And so we started the Roy Draco Americas in 2020, and there were several flights where I was the only one on the plane, and you
Wild.
walk into an airport and it's a ghost town. It was really strange. So naturally, we signed all that documentation and made all those introductions over Teams because you couldn't fly to the Netherlands and shake hands with anybody.
Right.
So we were in business for a couple of years before I actually went over there.
Yeah, this is more just like a personal question because like in being Jared and I started Crowns Partners about 10 years ago now. What's been like what would you say to like somebody that's wanting to go out on their own? What would you say for like encouragement? Because I think we need more of it, especially like even in Canada. What would your advice be?
That's an interesting question because my mom and dad asked me that same question, right? And they're the ones that raised me.
Okay.
How in the world did you turn out this crazy? Because it's not an easy choice and it's not an easy
Never.
life.
No.
I spent most of my career working for large publicly traded companies where if you had red on the P&L, it really didn't mean anything other than it's red on the P&L. It's not like they were going to
Write it off.
cash, right?
Right off somewhere.
Make more money next month and everything's good.
Yeah.
Where you're a bit more sensitive to that as an entrepreneur, right? That cash flow. I learned a ton about cash flow, but to do that, you have to have a bit of a gambler's personality, almost, and I think that's why it makes it so hard to find true entrepreneurs.
Right.
Is that there's a very specific personality to be able to deal with the highs and lows of the business. There's times when it's going so good you just don't know how you're going to stand anymore.
Yeah.
And then in a matter of a few days, you're wondering how in the world you're going to make payroll the next week. And it can be a pretty wild ride.
I love what you said about the gamblers thing because I was just talking to Jared about that. I was like, man, to enter like a big poker tournament now, to me it's a laugh because I'm like every day is it's totally different.
It is a different life.
So I guess it's but like you said, the cash flow. But it kind of sounds like for you learn like just don't stop. You know there's going to be another day.
Never quit.
Yep.
So I'm a college athlete. I grew up playing football, and I went to an engineering school. So naturally, we weren't exactly a killer on the football field. I took my beating about every weekend.
What was your what position were you?
I was a free safety of all places.
Oh, okay.
So I was really fast and a whole lot smaller than I am now.
Right.
But through that whole exercise, my dad's a football coach, and so I grew up in Texas playing Texas football. I played in front of more people in high school in Texas than I did in college.
Your stadiums are unbelievable.
They're like small college stadiums.
That's wild.
It's almost unfair. But through that process, you learn that you can't quit. Every day is a day to get better than you were yesterday, and some days you're going to win, some days you're going to lose, and the losing streak always comes to an end at some point.
Yes.
And so you just fight through, and it teaches you to have really thick skin, and it teaches you sort of to brush off stress. Not that there's not sleepless nights, but my sleepless nights usually start with me being so exhausted I'll crash at night, but then I'll wake up at 3:00 in the morning, the brain turns on, and you go to work.
That is amazing. Sometimes that's what you need, and you're like, oh, you know what? We can do this thing, and it's going to get us.
Right.
It's going to get us moving again.
Right. And those moments, even though it's 3:00 in the morning and you may be running on fumes, those moments are just there's a certain amount of power that comes from them that's just energizing, right? It's like an immediate battery charge.
So it sounds like that team sports for you actually, it's been a big asset for you in learning, probably running a team with
Absolutely.
InnoDredge and that, which I grew up playing. Like team sport for me was hockey.
Right.
And it's like you said, if there's a losing streak, it's going to end, and you get better and you learn how to get
You
better.
just keep grinding. Absolutely.
Do you I mean, I shouldn't get into sports. I'll start talking about that, and then we'll go completely off the rails. But
One of my favorite topics, anyway.
It's way too much fun, especially like the college football circuit down here is wild.
Right.
People are so passionate for it. They're so passionate. Where are you seeing big opportunities for growth with InnoDredge in the coming months, coming years? What do you see as like really good opportunity?
Well, it's starting to feel like really since the election, there was almost every election cycle that happens. It really doesn't matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans.
Yeah.
Every election cycle, there's a bit of a slowdown. Everybody's holding on to their cash to figure out what's going to happen next. So since the election, the requests have really picked up in our core business, which is the mining, sand, and gravel stuff. So I'm pretty excited about those leads that are coming through because, again, that's where we're good. That's where we're comfortable. And as sort of although we've been around technically for 5 years now, as a 1-year-old newbie as we are, it's nice to kind of stick with your core.
Right. Right.
But we've got some nice opportunities for dam desiltation process projects in Latin America, which is
Okay.
really interesting.
Dam desiltation projects.
Yes, sir. In this particular case, the dams were built in the 80s and 90s,
Okay.
and they silt in over time. And once the silt gets up to a certain level on the intakes for the hydropower dams, they have to desilt it, dredge it, essentially.
Got it. Got it.
And depending on the site, you do the same geologic sort of questions, right? You get, what's the sand? What's the gravel? How big's the rock? Are there any trees in it? And we have one that's actually upriver. They've got a handful of villages that just throw their trash in the river. So we're not only dealing with trees and sticks and boulders and rocks and sand,
Trash.
it's garbage. And so that project's been kind of fun to talk about because you really have to get creative on how you handle it with our lineup of equipment.
Do you have
What
to
do
like
you do?
you have to, on the garbage side, you must have to like keep it. Well, no, then you got the filter. Well, yeah. How does that work?
I'm curious. So we will be able to sort it to a certain extent, but inevitably there's going to be organics with the garbage because I don't have a means of separating to that level, right? So it'll be interesting to see what they do with it from there.
Yeah.
And then there's a handful of dams in the U.S. that are starting to talk about doing the same thing, dams that were built in the 50s and 60s. And it's funny when you go read the pro formas on these dams. There was one in the Dominican Republic a couple of years ago. It's a 50s or 60s era dam. All of them say, dam builds today, 20 years from now, you need to start dredging, and then you maintenance dredge for the rest of the life of the dam.
Oh, really?
Well, like any good government entity, they didn't
yeah.
start dredging at 20 years, and here we are 60 years later, and they wonder why it's filled it up.
Piling. And does that affect like? Well, no, it would affect everything, I guess, because of those pumps and all that.
Yeah, so the turbines have pretty high tolerances because they use them to generate electricity. So
Yeah.
they need them to really turn well. And so when you start getting silts and sands and sticks into those turbines, it gets to be a very expensive repair.
Right.
And so now these dam projects are looking for monster dredges so they can move material quickly. Where if it started 20, 30 years ago, they could have done it with a much smaller machine.
You said your biggest dredges, they can move like, did you say a couple thousand tons an hour?
Yeah, and that's not the biggest. That's
not the biggest.
That's sort of the biggest common.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, you can get up to just insane volumes with pumps.
Really? Okay. It's just you just load them up.
Almost limitless, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just need a big enough.
Just got to have a big enough
flow.
pump and a big enough motor.
Yeah. Okay. That's I guess you did mention it. It's interesting how you said about that. I don't know if we see it as much in Canada, but we're not on that fixed cycle as much for every 4 years. So like how people hold cash, doesn't matter who's gonna win or lose. Do you, with obviously the tariffs ongoing, Canada obviously probably has a good market potential for some dredging. How do you, and even like bringing product in though for your dredges, how does all that play? How are you sort of doing calculations on that?
So one of the conversations we're having with our supply chain is how to protect them from the tariffs, because that's really the goal, right? Obviously, I want to deliver equipment as cost effectively as possible to my customer.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I need to take care of my supply chain as well, because I'm a part of their family. And so when we talk to them, a lot of the times the conversation starts to talk about, okay, can you sell me engineering packages, and I'll do the construction fabrication build here. Or in Peru or Colombia or Brazil.
Getting
or
really
the case may be.
creative. Yeah.
Right. And so part of the beauty of our model is that we can fabricate virtually anywhere. I don't have a fixed shop in Montgomery or Conroe, Texas.
Yeah.
We use subs for most all of that. Well, if you use subs, all you need is a reputable sub to work with, whether it's in Canada or in Brazil.
Yeah, true.
So that's sort of the model that we're working off of at the moment is how to do that. And most of our suppliers have been pretty open to the idea. Some of them, like Permanent Magnet Motors, is one that's going to be very difficult because there's just not a shop in the U.S. that does permanent magnet
Are those
motors
coming
on
out of the
scale.
Are those directly from the Netherlands
Coming out of the
too?
Netherlands, yeah.
I'd never even heard about that before.
Permanent magnet motors are getting more and more common.
Okay.
As energy prices go up, they'll continue to get more common because they're 5 to 7% more efficient than a traditional motor.
That's huge.
It can be.
Yeah. The so with that supply chain then, because you have the European markets and then plus the South American that you're pulling product in for building these.
We don't do any sales in Europe. Europe, we're strictly a buyer. My partners over there are project managers and buyers and engineers. The only sales we do are in North and South America.
Right. Okay.
Which is plenty enough territory for me.
Yeah.
If I can't keep busy there, then I've got another problem.
Yeah. It sounds like a great opportunity, especially on the dam side.
Those will be fun projects.
Yeah.
Those will be real interesting projects.
I would imagine in Canada even. I don't know this for a fact, but I'd imagine there's some dams there too that are probably behind.
It's funny. Most of the dams were built from 1950 to about 1970, and they
Yep.
almost every docket I've seen says 20 years you need to start dredging. I don't know that I can name any of them that have dredges in them at the moment, and that's
Right.
60 years ago.
Right.
So it's going to happen.
On the like the suction dredges, mechanical dredges, the intelligent design, is there any areas that we maybe didn't cover yet that you really want like the potential clients and customers to know about? I'm not sure if we missed
Well,
anything.
I
on
think
any
the
section.
path toward automation is an interesting path for all
Okay.
of this. I mean, our traditional operating system has some light automation in it. It will control pump speeds. It will control ladder location.
Right.
It will do some of that. But the ability to actually remove the operator from the machine is coming very quickly.
Oh, is that coming as well? You think?
It's coming very quickly.
Okay.
And when you combine the operating system with the sonar system, now all of a sudden you've got the brain and the eyes.
Yeah.
And then you do some censoring. You know, there's a bunch of people running around the trade show here that are that specialize in vibration sensors and temperature sensors and that sort of thing.
So many sensors.
So you can load 1,000 sensors on this deal, and basically you've got a human that's there feeling, touching, seeing everything together. And now you're talking about being able to take your operator and put them in the scale house where they're weighing trucks and running the dredge, or in the operator house at the plant where they're running a plant and running a dredge.
Right.
And when you do that, you really get to optimize the system. Because traditionally you had a dredge operator that was feeding a processing plant that was being run by somebody else, and they were having to stay in constant communication to make sure the system's balanced.
Okay.
Well, when you put one person in the seat and he has full control over both systems, that communication goes away because it's one
Right.
person.
Right.
That can be extremely powerful, extremely powerful, and we're not very far away from that. They're
So-
doing some of that in Europe now.
Would you even are you saying basically like at some point that there might not even be somebody on the dredge that can just basically operate 24/7? And
Yes.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we're getting there very, very quickly.
Because like when you think of dredging too, the barge itself or the dredge itself, like if we're looking at this massive one behind you, does that thing move very much in a day?
It all depends on production rates and depth
Okay.
of material. So that some of them move quite a lot. They'll swing left and right constantly. Even this
I
one.
see.
They swing left and right constantly. And so one of the difficulties in automating a machine like that is making sure you don't swing too far and get into a set of anchor cables.
Oh, okay.
And so you have to GPS locate those with your sonar system and have the sonar system talk to the operating system. So it's complex and complicated to make sure there's no issues. And
Yeah.
when we have customers that want to be any level of automation, our first response to them is we need a period of time with an operator to understand how your deposit's going to work, because every deposit is different.
Okay.
They could be right next door to each other. They could be down the street from each other. All of them behave differently.
Yeah.
And if you don't take that into account, you'll end up paying for it in the long run. So we'll put an operator on them at least for a couple of 3 months, and then we'll start automating different systems, and we're really not far from a fully autonomous dredge.
That's interesting because you say like obviously on the mining side, some of this stuff like haul trucks they run like in a circuit. So the dredges in a way, if they're in like a closed confined area, you can almost map it out.
The beauty of it, particularly traditional automation systems, is all you got to do is find the pattern. Once you find the pattern, whatever the pattern happens to be, or series of patterns, it's super easy to automate. The hard part's identifying the repeatable pattern. And we're getting really good at that with dredges. The repeatable pattern is becoming more and more obvious. And so once you do that, automation is a piece of cake.
Yeah.
When you talk about next level automation and actual decision making, which is a very human characteristic, now you're starting getting into that AI stuff, which we're all studying as well, right? It's How do you incorporate?
The Netherlands is probably all over it right now.
Everybody
trying to
is.
figure out.
Me, my competitors,
Yeah.
we're all in the same boat. This AI thing is a novelty that's super interesting, right? We use it for a lot of different things, not quite for dredge operation yet, but
Yeah.
I don't think that's very far off before you feed all this stuff into an AI model of some sort, and it's actually making decisions for you, because the decision tree in an automation system is just yes/no loops, but with an AI, there could be a maybe.
That's yes, no loops, and then AI, it can almost address those variables that
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, you get a third opportunity, which is a maybe.
Yeah, well, this is a lot. We've covered a lot. Hopefully the viewers have kind of a whole new understanding on the construction side. In closing, is there anything else, kind of key information or anything that we didn't cover that you want to let the viewers know about in dredging, of course?
Well, we really love what we do. My whole team, the Dutch guys, the U.S. team, we're passionate about dredges, dredging, and helping our customers. And so we'd love to come see a site.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part of the job is getting on and kicking rocks.
Nice. So that's actually, and that's a great, almost in a way, your call to action is like get you on a site to kind of see what
Take a look.
see what you can help them out with.
Right. See what kind of solutions we can find.
Fantastic. Well, Richard, it has been fantastic. I just it's always fun to talk to an entrepreneur, obviously. The and a little bit of sports mixed in, but
Nice.
I obviously everybody watching, check out InnoDredge. I think we've got your LinkedIn, so that's we'll have the links in the description for that. Your website is innodredge.com, and we'll obviously put your LinkedIn so they can connect with you on there. You a big
Absolutely.
LinkedIn guy?
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
I
Live and
love
die
the
by it.
platform. Awesome. And thank you to all the viewers watching the construction show. We will please like and subscribe, follow for all the next episodes coming here from St. Louis, and we will see you next time. Thank you for watching.